is all very good in statement of facts, but what about the psychological aspects of human behavior, greed, competition, what of more and more conspicuous consumption and so forth? Your organization must certainly have the problem solved.
If we have, that's more than the Christian church and the Mohammedan church and the Buddhists and all the rest of them have done in the past 2,000 years, isn't it? They haven't solved greed yet. Of course, if you're attempting to discuss human conduct under a technate, bear in mind that you couldn't steal if you wanted to. Stealing is legally defined as taking something of value from someone else, is it not? Correct? Well, your medium of distribution, which you receive your income, is of value to no one else. Even your wife wouldn't gain if she took it out of your pocket, because it's non-transferable. She has her own currency. She doesn't have to bother with you, you bum. Huh? She has an income as good as you do. Huh? Well, for the first time, you know, in this country, why, the men will really have to be good, won't they? Huh? Well, let's take another thing. Say you go in for hobbies. For instance, rare stamps, for one. And you have hundreds of thousands spending part of their days and nights trying to accumulate rare stamps. And you have a big market in the stamp collection. Well, under a technate, the Bureau of Engraving would duplicate every stamp ever published, and you could buy them all for the equivalent of $1. I'd have cut that rubbish out, wouldn't it? Huh? Very simple. See, the technological approach to these problems are totally different than the moralistic and legalistic approach. For instance, you can pass the legalistic thing. Passengers are prohibited from standing on the platform in this railway car. Well, it never stopped passengers from standing on a platform yet, did it? Try and put gates on it. Well, the engineer just designs the car without a platform. And he says, stand on it if you can. Huh? Sucker, if you try it. It isn't there. Huh? Now you can go on down the list. You might have a phobia and collect salt cellars. There are people as screwy as that today, and they will be under a technate. But the trouble is, under a technate, if he accumulated quite a few thousand of those, he'd run into the problem of storage space. And as he couldn't get anything for it in coin of the realm, he'd be stymied pretty soon, wouldn't he? See, no citizen could exchange that into coin of the realm. The income comes as a matter of citizenship. And when you're producing and distributing abundance, you cannot afford to differentiate in anybody's income, because it'd be so much for everybody that the accounting would be so damn expensive to attempt to differentiate it. So you give them all the same. You merely want a continental accounting of how much is consumed in everything, every hour of the day, every day in the year. Then you have a continuous automatic inventory. You know where it's consumed, by whom, and when. So your conduct of human affairs, as you now understand it, that's been played on for thousands of years. What you have got to realize is, for the first time, you have to design a government not of human behavior, but a government of things, because the things have become important in maintaining the life of everyone on this continent. The extraneous energy consumed per capita per day by the industrial complex is many times greater than that you put into yourself as food. So this industrial complex is the most important thing. It is the most tenuous. And that is something which has to be operated on definitely known propositions and not by guesswork.
How many billions would be necessary to reverse the downtrend in production?
I think I've already told you that. 150 billions a year is the deficit in national purchasing power.
Do you not feel that the international labor movement is a reasonable vehicle to promote the ideas of technocracy?
What is the international labor movement? What do you mean by it? Labor unions? Proletariat? Well, we've got a sad case in the British Labour Party. After all, the ideology of the British Labour Party stems from Robert Owens, John Ruskin, and John Wesley. That's a kind of a moral soup, isn't it? And they open their meetings with prayer, don't they? Well, prayer is just about all they can do. So they nationalized the defunct coal mines. Why didn't they nationalize something that was really important? So you save the coal mine owners and you give them guaranteed government bonds. Isn't that what happened? Well, why not put them through the ringer? Why pay them anything? So you have a Clem Attlee become a peer. You have the same kind of an attitude here. If they can get to be senator, they've really arrived. Well, that kind of thing isn't going to get anywhere. You've got to do a thorough job of a technological revamping of the British Isles or of France. What are you going to do in France, where 42% of the population are peasants and pay less than 4% of the taxes? Where you have more retail stores per 100,000 population than any place in the world? Where there's one wholesaler for every 4 retailers? I mean, how cuckoo can you get? Well, the International Labor Party, what is meant by it? You mean socialist parties, labor parties? Well, the Communist Party of Russia is radical enough for that over here or over there. But on this continent, communism so damn far to the right is bourgeois. Let's quit kidding ourselves. It isn't radical enough. Kind of bother you? We'll explain it to you sometime.
You mentioned the heat generated in the 40-foot tube of the Russian jet. It cannot be stainless steel. Is it ceramics?
Well, quite possible it's fused silica or fused aluminum, or a combination of both. That would do it.
In this social change, what would happen to stocks and personal property?
Why don't you separate the question? Stocks, bonds, debentures are either items of debt or equities in the same thing. Well, there's a terrific collection of that paper in the United States today. The only trouble is it's a little too stiff. So the technate would repulp it for paper of finer tissue.
Here's 2 on Russia that are practically the same. What is Russia's future, and are the Russians tending toward the right system?
You get enough energy-consuming devices in Russia, and they can only go one way. as you approach the consumption of 200,000 kilogram calories per capita per day in the production and distribution of physical wealth in the country, you'll be more and more compelled into the elevation of an entirely new form of social decision. Not that of counting noses, or the one nose of an autocracy, or the 200 million of a democracy. You'll have to base all decisions on the probabilities of that entire complex of energy-consuming devices, because you have to determine the load by seconds clean across a continent. You can't even count noses that fast. Yeah? And as Russia accumulates more and more energy-consuming devices, she tends to that. And what are your European papers and magazines, and even here, accusing the upcoming technically trained administrators in Russia today? What do they call? The red technocrats. How do you like it? We're the ones that have a laugh. Well, someone wants to know about education in the United States. Can we catch up to the Russians? Catch up to what? We have around 109,000 governments in the United States. 48 states, 3,027 counties, over 17,000 municipalities, over 17,000 townships, and over a like number of special districts, and 52,000 educational. Of the 52,000, 12,000 of those educational districts have 84% of all students of the 30-some million attending our schools. Those are school boards, local school boards. And what's a local school board? They're appointed from the prime chiselers of their community, are they not? Huh? Well, do you think the hierarchy of local school boards is going to surrender voluntarily to higher education? Why, certainly not. They have got prestige to maintain. You're not going to do it because in these 52,000 school districts, there is no national curriculum, no national standard, no national performance, and no national coordination. So therefore, the 52,000 would have to be abolished. It would have to be an integrated federal, one system, coast to coast, with the same standards, the same curriculum. And you'd have to train the educational profession, because the educational profession that's been brought up in the last 40 years in the United States can't call its soul its own. The only way they can really live is under an assumed name in another town. And who's responsible? The average citizen in these United States. Do you want your little Johnny educated and your little Nellie? Yes. No matter how big a moron they are, you want them graduated. You want the standards high enough to force selectivity? No, you do not. Will you stand your schools being operated every day in the year? Oh, no. Can't have that. What's wrong with them? Well, it's very simple. For the last 60 years in the United States, it's been undemocratic to have brains other than that of the acumen of a chiseler. You could design and develop an Eskimo pie, but God help you if you ever thought of something that was long-range and strategic instead of tactical. If you did, you were a red, a clear, a square. Your community looked down on you. Years ago, the passengers on the Interurban coming into Dayton, Ohio, used to look out the window on a 40-some acre field of alfalfa, and they said, isn't it just too bad? There are those boys, nice boys, and now if they'd only buckle down and attend to business, they'd really be something. But do you know what they've done? They've begged and borrowed. They've even taken their sister's dowry, and she can't be married because they've taken all her money. Yeah? It's just too bad the way these people behave. When the commission came over from the Aéronautique de France, they were looking for two boys, Orwell and his brother. The mayor of Dayton says, why, no, you don't want to see those people. Pardon, monsieur. Those are the only ones we want to see. Wilbur and Orville Wright. Cuckoo as hell. Huh? Well, wait a minute. What have you got? You got a long line in the United States. You got a man that comes forward with a new explosive and some new inventions. Can he get anywhere here? Oh, no. Not a brick. He goes abroad, and the British make him a multimillionaire and a night baronet. Sir Hiram Maxim. You want me to go on? Last year, de Grolier, one of the greatest geologists of all times, commits suicide. Major Armstrong, the inventor of FM, commits suicide, and so does Young of the New York Central. Some system we got, isn't it? Now you're going to change that educational system, you're not even going to catch up to a louse.
Reports would indicate that on the basis of present rates of consumption, our country threatens to run out of the basic energy resource, gas, oil, and coal, by 1975. What can be done to delay this? Assuming that vegetable oil could be used to power our automobiles, approximately how much land would be cultivated to furnish fuel for 10,000 miles driving, assuming present efficiency? And then one that can probably be worked into that, for how many years do we have sufficient oil?
Well, that depends what you mean. If you mean the so-called estimated reserves in the ground, we'll try and take them out. Those are theoretical, you know. The recovery of theoretical reserves is nowhere as near the estimation of a theoretical reserve. Now quit worrying about the vegetable oil or alcohol, because if you're going to run American automobiles on extraction from vegetable products, it would take more soil under cultivation than all the soil given to wheat and corn in the United States, plus several times. You going to do it?
I'd submit that inevitable population increase will eventually, within the next century, make a reasonable high standard of living impossible under any system. What about it?
Well, if you permit energy-consuming devices to grow, after all, the human animal's an energy-consuming device, isn't it? When Technocracy is speaking of energy-consuming devices, we include all the two-legged and four-legged and anything that consumes energy, whether animate or inanimate. The population of the world today is 2,700,000,000. In 1800, it was only 800 million. Back in the Middle Ages, it was 400 million. Back BC, it was less than 200 million. The waste spaces of the world are filled up. Your highest rates are in South America. But your rates in Britain, Holland, West Germany, Italy, they're all excessive for their resource condition. In order to keep Holland within bounds, you'll have to export 72,000 Dutch a year. This is not our figures, this is Holland-Dutch figures. Japan has done a marvelous job. It has lowered its birth rate. And abortions are legalized, and the total abortions in Japan exceed the live births. Well, unfortunately, that's not the way to go at it. You see, the human female has been known for a long, long time that she had the capacity to dissolve the fetus without any deleterious effect on the human female and a reproductive organism. Men have been working on it. They have found the trigger. It's odorless, colorless, tasteless. And it only requires that minute percentage of 1%. Next time you look at a canister of Warfans, that's that rat poison, look down and see the percentage. Well, it's the same percentage. Put it in the drinking water of any metropolitan area, and nothing, two-legged or four-legged, will conceive so long as that minute percentage is in the water. If you take it out within 60 days, it becomes permissible. Cute, isn't it? We told you science would get you. Now tell that to His Holiness. Or the head of your particular church, whatever that may be. This is not a question of persuasion. It's a question of technological compulsion, because if you're going to handle the population growth of the future, you have got to limit the growth of energy-consuming devices in certain fields and accelerate them in others. Where is Britain going with its population? Where is Italy going? There's no future for a greater number of Italians or British or West Germans or Dutch. And there is none for Indians or South America. That brings up a nice question.
How does the factory worker, or what are the factory workers' take-home pay, 1, in Russia, 2, in China, compare with the U.S., regarding steel industries particularly, they're asking?
Those take-home pay things, you see, are one of the propaganda devices, but you have to work so many hours. Now, there's only 5 million and a fraction tons of steel produced in China. There are 6 large integrated steel plants under construction in China, plus a number of smaller ones. That will bring in probably 12 million tons in the next couple of years. Russia's steel industry is growing. Russia at the present time has 26 2,400-ton blast furnaces under construction. Its open hearts in operation and under construction are 400 and 500 tons, not 150 or 200 as we have here. It is operating 185-ton electric furnaces, and they're building 500-ton electric furnaces. talking about something that once was. With that kind of equipment going in, it doesn't make a hang what anybody's comparative wages are, because you'll have to bring up the entire economy before you can talk about it. I was giving you just several illustrations that run contrary to the popular concept, that's all. I wasn't trying to compare whether the Russians pay more for bread than you do here in the United States, except that black bread is a damn sight more substantial than what you find around here.
What is the present consumption of kilogram calories per capita per day in the United States?
Slightly under 170,000 kcal per capita per day. You haven't far to go.
What does your emblem stand for?
Well, this emblem, it's known and it's one of the generic symbols of the world. The swastika is one too, except Hitler reversed the arms of the swastika, you see. Made it run the opposite way. No wonder he got into trouble. This one is as old as the swastika. There are two parts of the yin and the yang. It's also the symbol for the basic cell in biology, this symbol here. Cell of all living things. It's called the monad. In Technocracy adopted it because it's distinctive, it's simple, and at 20,000 feet in the air, you still can distinguish it on the ground, which you can't with the stars and stripes of the Canadian flag either. They blur out, don't they?
You mentioned the lack of copper in the United States. I understand there is a surplus of copper. How come?
Surplus of copper where in the world? Yes, but not in the United States. What's your latest notice? Yesterday, your Kennecott and others are shutting down still further. Your Miami shutting down still further. What's the consumption of copper? Well, the consumption is declining, isn't it? Yes. Productivity, potential of copper around the world. In Europe, the biggest copper thing is the Union Miniers de Bor in Yugoslavia. And there's an upcoming mine on the other side of the range. But there's practically no other copper. The Rio Tinto in Spain is dead and gone. You've got a little in Sweden. You have copper in Africa, in Russia, China, South America, Mexico, Canada. But those are higher grade ores. But if you want a high grade ore, go on up to Coronation Gulf in Canada on the Arctic. 46% Cu Bayernite. Beautiful, isn't it? Are you going to mine it by private enterprise? No, baby, you aren't. It'll take a cooperative development of the continent to take it out.
Here's insistence on this KGC per capita per day. How much longer will it take America to exceed 200,000 KGCs per day?
If I knew, I wouldn't tell you. After all, you're all so smart, you'd want to go home and take advantage of it, wouldn't you? What do you think I am? Biggest sucker as you are? Huh?
What country comes close to operating like a technocracy?
There isn't any country that does that. Russia's still a political hodgepodge, you know. They had to cater to all the minorities, everything else. You've got so many different divisions. Down in the Ukraine, you got the Ukrainian language and the Russian on street signs. You're still playing up the culture. You're going to have the Bolshoi Theater here, March 20, Bolshoi Ballot, March 21st. You're going to derive a satisfaction from the Russian culture? Well, that isn't the important thing in Russia. That's a hangover from the czars. 2 centuries. What's important is something else entirely apart from their culture. There's no place on earth that is operated on a technological basis of technocracy.
What is the solution? How, under what circumstances is the change to come about? What will be the immediate effect on the people? And what will you do with human nature? Well, that's the end.
Well, I don't know who asked that question, but I have this to say, that when it comes to questions, I will do my best to answer them. But no matter how great the extent of the knowledge of technocracy is, there's one thing we cannot do. We cannot give you understanding. Only God can do that, and I won't even try to compete with him. No, there's no sense in a series of questions like that. How does it come about? And what are you going to do with human nature? Never mind human nature, there isn't any such thing. There's human behavior. Doesn't make any difference how tall you are, how broad you are, or what your color is. Given a given set of circumstances, you'll perform that way. Bring an Eskimo down here that consumes 7,000 calories a day. Can he live like that? No. He'll be forced to change, whether he likes it or not. Doesn't make any difference what he thinks he is, or what other citizens here think he is. Now, you could have asked me a lot more questions, couldn't you? Could have had a lot more fun out of it. Is that all they were? My God, can't you do better than that?
There were duplicates that I...
Oh, duplicates. Well, you got enough in this room here to organize Michigan without half trying. Throw Windsor and Sarnia in the boot. All right. What kind of a railroad do you got to have if you're going to really have rail transportation? Ever stop to figure it out? Lincoln wanted to build a Union Pacific 3 feet wide. That's how much he knew about anything. Your present railroad gauge is 4 feet 8.5 between rails. What's the matter with it? No matter what you do, the moment you put your truck and bolster on, the only way you can carry a load is run your car up in height and in length. Your center of gravity is way up here. And the moment you start to hit speed, she starts to whip. And she pounds the roadbed on the rails and the tracks. Your GM diesel engine division turns out locomotive diesels, doesn't it? Has it ever turned out any 12,000 horsepower per locomotive? No. Are there such locomotives in the world? Yes. Where are they? Will somebody tell me? France. France has them, yeah. What speed do they hit with a train? 214 miles an hour. Now, Technocracy's design of a railroad system is a 3-meter gauge, 9 feet, 10 1/10 inches between rail. Your cars are over 16 foot wide inside. They're pedestal suspension. That is, they don't rest on a bolster. They're hung from up here inside, but you wouldn't see it. The bottom is smooth like a boat, 4 inches above the rail. The center of gravity is where? Down on the rail. You round the curve, does the top fling out? No, the bottom comes out, and the glass of water remains vertical, and you don't even spill a drop. 5 to 6 hours between New York and Chicago. Can you afford to run an airline 20 miles out in each case? No. You couldn't afford air transportation because the other would be better and cheaper. Yeah? What are we talking about? Can you design automobiles and trucks? Yes. Why shouldn't all the pistons and all the cylinders in any automotive vehicle be all the same? What do you have to have all of these variations for? Have you had a post piston, valveless, 2-cycle, supercharged, solid injection, air-cooled, fluid 4-wheel drive? Not a fluid clutch now, that's an entirely different thing. This is the drive is in the wheel. Okay? All wheels drive. And the wheels turn this way. All ones. So we did it some years ago. We went up and put the nose of it up against the traffic cop standing on his little stand in Stamford, Connecticut, and put the nose here and ran the car right around him like this, and the nose never left his belt. Simple? Well, that was 20-some years ago. Whose design that the insurance companies are advertising about the highway of the future? You've seen them in the coaxial cable. Well, we had models running 25 years ago in Storwin. We published the first stuff on the heat pump. Thermodynamic heating, we called it. Same way with other things. We did more to introduce the cotton picker south the Mason-Dixon line than anybody else. And we're more responsible for moving the Negro out of the South than all the other organizations in the United States. You put them down there and the Negro migrated, didn't you? Of course, I wouldn't say there are very many in Detroit yet. Wait a while, honey child, wait a while, there's coming. Because New York and Chicago are both going to have over 1 million Negroes in the next couple of years. And you're going to have problems. This country is going to have problems. It never had when they were south of the Mason-Dixon line. And there are more schools in New York, Philadelphia, and other northern cities that are completely segregated, solid black, than any southern city. They're not segregated by law, no. They're segregated by geography and economic division. And what does the NACP want? It wants the city of New York to transport Negro students out of any school that has more than 15% Negro and distribute them around to all the other schools, so that the percentage of Negro students in high schools and public schools will be less than 15% per school, so it won't be segregated. Who in the hell is cockeyed? Well, but you have to do it to the Italian, won't you? There's over half a million Puerto Ricans. Well, you'll have to do it to them. You'll be so busy running buses back and forth, they'll have no time to even get to school. Now, these are practical propositions. And you can vote till you're black in the face and you're not going to solve them. But if you had a real designed railroad system, highway system, power system, here are Continental Power System, million volts DC. Well, that was 1924 when they brought that out. And today, a couple of months ago, the government of the USSR has announced there's going to go 2 4,000-mile grids of a million volt DC. Brother, take it away. In other words, here's a country, they had it in their lap, and the Russians took it. What in hell are you going to do if you can't get your own country to realize that they have to move out? What do you think? I've done about all I can for you. I started this thing sick with cold, so I'm not up to my usual form because I didn't throw enough pipes at you. But I thank you one and all for being here. And on this anniversary, my salute to all of you. Thank you.
Membership is available to American citizens, providing they are not an active member of a political party. If anybody is interested in taking out membership this evening, just wait off to the side of the door and we'll take care of you. We thank you for coming, and look us up at the Y on Friday nights. Good night.
See, the technological approach to these problems are totally different than the moralistic and legalistic approach. For instance, you can pass the legalistic thing. Passengers are prohibited from standing on the platform in this railway car. Well, it never stopped passengers from standing on a platform yet, did it? Try and put gates on it. Well, the engineer just designs the platform, the car without a platform. And he says, stand on it if you can. Yeah? Sucker, if you try it. It isn't there. Yeah? Now you can go on down the list. You might have a phobia and collect salt cellars. There are people as screwy as that today, and they will be under a technique. But the trouble is, under a technique, if he accumulated quite a few thousand of those, he'd run into the problem of storage space.
This is all very good in statement of facts, but what about the psychological aspects of human behavior, greed, competition, what of more and more conspicuous consumption and so forth? Your organization must certainly have the problem solved.
Well, if we have, that's more than the Christian church and the Mohammedan church and the Buddhists and all the rest of them have done in the past 2,000 years, isn't it? They haven't solved greed yet. Of course, if you're attempting to discuss human well, let's take another thing. Today you go in for hobbies. For instance, rare stamps, for one. And you have hundreds of thousands spending part of their days and nights trying to accumulate rare stamps. And you have a big market in the stamp collection. Well, under a technique, the Bureau of Engraving would duplicate every stamp ever published, and you could buy them all for the equivalent of $1. I'd have cut that rubbish out, wouldn't it? Huh? Very simple. Conduct under a technique. Bear in mind that you couldn't steal if you wanted to. Stealing is legally defined as taking something of value from someone else, is it not? Correct? Well, your medium of distribution which you receive your income is of value to no one else. Even your wife wouldn't gain if she took it out of your pocket, because it's non-transferable. She has her own currency. She doesn't have to bother with you, you bum. Huh? She has an income as good as you do. Huh? Well, for the first time, you know, in this country, why, the men will really have to be good, won't they? And as he couldn't get anything for it in coin of the realm, he'd be stymied pretty soon, wouldn't he? See, no citizen could exchange that into coin of the realm. The income comes as a matter of citizenship. And when you're producing and distributing abundance, you cannot afford to differentiate in anybody's income, because it'd be so much for everybody that the accounting would be so damn expensive to attempt to differentiate it. So you give them all the same. You merely want a continental accounting of how much is consumed in everything, every hour of the day, every day in the year. Then you have a continuous automatic inventory. You know where it's consumed, by whom, and when. So your conduct of human affairs